This keyboard kind of feels like playing a xylophone with stones, but you're throwing the stones kind of randomly and just hoping they're going to hit. Come see why. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm reviewing my Hohner Pianet N from roughly 1969, and I'm going to go over what I like about it, what I dislike, and why I think you should or shouldn't buy this. To get started, let me tell you a little backstory. So I obtained this from doing some cold emails out to my local colleges, and I actually received one back from Hope College in Holland, Michigan, which is about 3 hours from where I live. And they said that they didn't have any of the Wurlitzers I was looking for, but they did have a Hohner Pianet. Okay, so talk a little more. I drive up there, pick it up, and it's a Pianet. I mean, I couldn't tell you, I couldn't say it was a wonderfully in shape keyboard. It was definitely very interesting when it came to modifications. There was a volume and tone knob selector added in, but for some reason was mounted on the control panel, which didn't allow the lid to be closed all the way. There was one mounting screw for the leg assembly, which looked welded. There was also a plethora of unnecessary holes drilled, which I do not know why. I filled them now pretty poorly, but I don't know. The lid was also assembled so that it could fold flat instead of the traditional triangle music stand. And then there was also an issue with the mounting hardware because someone previously ripped out the little metal sleeves that the pins for the legs go into. So just those on the surface, I was definitely a little suspicious. Again, a free piano, a free keyboard, who cares, right? So I'm still very glad I was able to give this opportunity to have this because it was super fun, and it's always nice to have a little bit of a challenge. Now, the only reason I'm being so harsh on this is just because of my experience with other electric keyboards and more particularly acoustic pianos. I'm a piano technician by trade, and I do this more for fun. I've had my hands on Wurlitzers, Rhodes, Hohners, and other sorts of things, but this has definitely been the most challenging project yet, probably next to the Vox Jaguar. There's just a lot of factors that aren't able to be fine-tuned, which I'm normally used to. So take my negativity a little bit less, because as someone who's going to be just playing it, then who really cares? But this is more of a how I fixed it up and how potentially you could fix it up if you've got one now. Opening up the keyboard, you can see that this is a version 2 or 1. I forget which one it is. I know one of them has the metal on and off knob, and then the other one has just the plastic vibrato knob as the on and off. Mine obviously does not have the plastic knob. It does have the vibrato for the plastic on and off switch, and then just the light for the on and off. My Hohner did not come with the mounting screws for the top lid. It seems like most of them do not, probably because they're open so much. But these screws are 6/32 screws. I think that's the thread. And then this is a 1/4 inch, a 3/4 of an inch screw along with this one. I'm telling you this because this was the hardest thing for me to find. I do not know why. I went through 4 trips to my local hardware store, and I got this yesterday. So I'll save you a little bit on that. These are finishing washers. I couldn't tell you what size I got, but I do believe the original hardware was brass, I think. I am missing a screw on my vibrato switch. That is my fault. I do not know where it is. I swear I kept it. Other than that, the metal front key slip, was in pretty fine condition. It's a little bit worn, but for 70 years, it's not bad. I do not have the key. It wasn't locked, thankfully. My keys were in pretty good condition. I only had 4 that looked like bananas. They worked, but they looked like bananas. They were all whoop, whoop. So I was luckily able to reach out to Ken Rich Piano Services and order 4 replacement keys at $25 a piece. And they look great, at least as best as they could. The banana key problem is something that's very common, and you can also have some luck swapping out which key is which. Just please make sure that you correctly put each note of the key in the right note, because especially when it comes to the G and the A, they look similar, but there is in fact difference in spacing when it comes to the sharp placement and where it cuts off on the actual white key. Other than that, the appearance, I really only used some Old English dark wood stain. I've never used Old English before, and I'm very for it now. It really did some magic shit to it, man. I'll put some photos here. But the before and after, for just a wipe on, it's an easy solution, but this is a veneer, as you can tell by the chipping. And sanding that, I was advised, would be a bad idea. So I went with that, and it looks pretty all right, other than the whole job. But sorry. So the first thing I did was take apart the piano and clean under the keys and just kind of get a good assessment of it. I'll put up a clip after this clip of me taking a video when I first got it, as I did have some funny little realizations in that. But before, I'll put some photos up of what I saw beforehand, and it was relatively clean on the inside. Nothing really crazy. Honestly, the inside of the Hohner, thankfully, was pretty much untouched other than those electrical modifications. And that's why it was relatively easy compared to extremely, extremely difficult to fix. Here is the Pianet hooked up to the Variac. Slowly bringing up the voltage on the amplifier. Still no light yet. Oh, there we go. Keys are kind of working. Little warped in some areas, which is a little concerning. But just 1, 2, I think 3. Hopefully I could find some sort of replacement, but won't be yellow. Obviously, here is the weirdo volume and tone pots, which was for some reason put right here, which won't let the lid over here close. Whatever. Sticky pads are half falling off, half broken. Got the new ones ready. Here's the amp kit, and here's a key straightener. Now that the lid is open, I do have this propped up. It's not good to leave it hanging off the side because that hinge and those poor wood holes, I do not trust them. So looking out from a bird's eye view, we have our reeds, our preamp, transformer, our outputs, our sussy little volume and pot tone, or tone pot, our fuse, and then the key rods, the sticky pads that hold on to the reeds. The pickup is the little metal bar that goes all the way through here that kind of looks like little fork teeth. And then you also have your key rest pad, your key rail rest felt, I guess you should say. And then to actually take out the keys, it's this screw right here. It's super easy compared to the Thomas organ variants, which have that little spring. This, just you push in, twist out, pops up really easily. The actual feel of the piano is entirely dictated by the sticky pad and the spring under the key. The spring is fixed to the key when you place it down to make sure that it's put in the groove. And then that dictates the height. There is no external height change like you could with punchings on a Rhodes or a Wurlitzer. It is strictly how far down the rod is bent, or the sticky, the spring inside the key. There is a lip on each key that goes under here, and that actually brings it back up, and it stops under this little piece of red felt under there, which technically also does level the keys. The only reason I'm so picky on leveling is just because that's kind of the first step you do when you do a regulation on a keyboard, and with this really not having any sort of leveling system that doesn't directly affect the sound, it was a little difficult for me to adjust to. So with all that being said, I'm going to zoom now into the preamp and this section, and then we can kind of go over the electronics for that. Okay, first looking at our preamp, you'll see the bulb here. The bulb is actually what dictates your vibrato. So this is a light sensitive, or photosensor, I guess you'd call it. And this bulb blinks, and every time it blinks, it changes the volume of the output. So it is in fact not a true vibrato, I believe. I think a true vibrato is when you change the pitch. Maybe that's chorus. I forgot. Or tremolo. Sorry. But you can actually, fun fact, you can adjust how strong the vibrato is by moving the photosensor away from the light. Since it's not as close and doesn't get any extra strains of light or whatever. I don't know. I did replace all of the capacitors on the board. There was quite a few, a little small guys too, like these, and a few more. And they were a little bit of a pain because they were these little block ones. Maybe these aren't capacitors. I don't know. I just bought a kit. But I replaced all those and I wiggled them out. They were pretty tough to get out, but they are out. And now it works fine. Honestly, it didn't have much hum to begin with. I just wanted fresh stuff in there anyway. But it's super important to make sure the lid is on when doing demos because it will be staticky and loud if not. The lid grounds to the rest of the keyboard using this little lip right here between the wood and the conductive material. And there's also conductive shielding on the bottom of the lid. And if that's not in that groove, you're not going to have a solid ground. The volume and tone pot. The volume pot does work, but the tone does not. Again, this was mounted right here. Why? I do not know. I do not know. Obviously, they could not close the lid. I mean, anywhere you could put this. Just put it inside. Like, you changing the tone that much? They did make it so that you can play the keyboard without the pedal. That is an issue where you need to have a pedal hooked in. So thankfully, I guess that pot does do something. But to me, I just decided to stick it in there. I didn't even decide to mount it. It's not doing anything. You're not touching it. So just leave it. Why not? I didn't touch any of the outputs. They all worked fine. Granted, they're all in German on the control plate, so I couldn't really tell you what they do. But all I know is that they marked one with a Sharpie arrow, and I plug it into that one. I'll show you that in a second. So let's talk real quick about the arguably most difficult part of this process, which is voicing. The actual process of getting each key level in volume is not too hard. What happens is when the Hohner decides to stop doing what it should, for reasons I couldn't tell you. I have 3 or 4 keys that are just a lot more trebly than the rest. I tried everything. I cleaned the reed, because the reeds are important. You have to make sure they're clean, especially when you take off the original pads. My original pads, photo up now, were completely stuck to the reed. You want to take off all the keys, make it easy on you. Take off all the pads, isopropyl alcohol it. Make sure you get under the reed as well, and in between the reed and the pickup bar, because it's very, very close. Your pickup to the reed is going to be extremely close. Like, it's pretty crazy compared to, wordlets are, yeah, they're close, but it's a little scary. Like, on a wordletser, you'd be shorting. But on this one, no. So how you actually change the volume of the key is by moving the pickup metal bar closer to the reed or farther away. Do this when it's off, because this is just like a wordletser. It's a fully active bar and it will electrocute you. There is a neat little wooden pickup adjuster here, but it is made out of poopy wood and broke. Yeah, I was pretty embarrassed. So you adjust the rod, and then there is a chance that you may need to adjust the sticky pad location. Believe it or not, these sticky pads are all located roughly where they should be. You'll see a few of them that are kind of a little out of place, and that is just because of the wonkiness of the Pianet. There is a pretty strict guide on where you should put the sticky pads going down from the base. And I did notice that it definitely does help. And there are a lot of people that did a lot more research on that than me, so I'm not going to dispute it. Now, an important factor that you'll actually not hear today is the use of silicone oil. Currently, I have ordered 100,000 CST, I think it is, silicone oil, which helps make the sticky pads a little more sticky, which will also make your keys feel less light. Like this guy. He's barely even picking up the reed. But this guy, there's a solid amount of stick. It's very hit or miss, even when you pay $180 for the replacement pads, which is why a lot of people swear by adding some of that silicone oil to it. It's often found in hobby shops for, I think, like model planes and stuff or something. But I do believe that will help the sound out a lot and bring it back to that kind of classic Hohner sound. Because right now I do believe it's a little more mellow, but I do kind of like it. It's definitely kind of like the M model, I believe they call it, where it's the console, but you're not hitting the reed with a hammer like this, where you would be kind of sucking it up. So that's kind of the only major change that I would recommend you do, honestly. But right now, this is just pre-oil and a little bit more quiet. So here is our back control panel. As you can tell, here is the Dynamic low impedance and the Schweller foot swell, classic. The Nets mains, love that one. You can also notice that my Nets mains input is fallen in because the little stamper screws or whatever broke on the plastic housing. This is your power input, I guess you'd call it. And I believe there's something about touching these two together that will electrocute you or something. Hopefully they changed it, or else I think I'd be dead. But something about that and touching these two with the transistor or the transformer is not good. So don't touch it. But you could try. So the Sharpie arrow was pointing to this 300 millivolts. So would that be millivolt? MV? Input or output, I should say. So I just use this one. I'm assuming this one would be less of an output. I couldn't tell you. Oh, the low impedance. Yeah, I don't know too much about that. I also don't know what this is. It looks like it looks like an ox, but it's definitely not an RCA, because it's way too in there. But I don't know. Maybe it is. Couldn't tell you. But it's definitely one of the most interesting control panels I've seen. The little power plug here is quite a difficult one to manangle. Let me grab this. This is what I kind of did. I had to actually bend apart the metal contacts in there to fit it around the larger plugs. And it just kind of barely fits in there, but it does do it enough where it will get adequate power and not fall out. That was pretty much the only hiccup I had with the control panel. Now onto our mounting hardware. This is just a 3/4 inch knob with bolt that I got from Ace. It came pre-made with this little handle, and I think it fits perfectly. I did have to sand it a little bit, but it works great. And I did use 3/8 wooden dowels, 2 right here, that go and kind of stable it. It does move a little bit still, but only with the lid down, which is a little weird. It does still sway, as you can see, but I just do not know how to get rid of that. The crossbar doesn't really seem to help. But there are originally 2 little metal housings you will have in here, and then on the original legs there was a metal bar on each instead of a wooden dowel, which would just kind of slide in. But unfortunately mine were stolen. So that is the same on the other side, and I got these legs made from a local woodworker who does work with Chicago Electric Piano Company, and Chicago Electric Piano actually allowed him to get one of their original legs just to create straight from. But he actually does work with them with Fender Rhodes cases and other things like that, so he has kind of experience in this. But I believe this was the first Hohner Pianet leg set that he made. Looking down here, this is my little DIY crossbar I made. I just grabbed a long wooden dowel rod, and I drilled a hole through it, and I just drilled a hole straight through the leg. Originally, the mounting hardware is 2 holes here, which you'd have 2 screws to screw in, but I just could not. I'm not a good woodworker, and I couldn't really get a good looking square piece that would be able to fit in those that looked and felt stable. So I went and just drilled a hole through, put a rubber washer here so it doesn't mar up the surface, and then put a screw or a bolt with a knob all the way through to screw in. And I think it's just fine. Honestly, I don't really think you need a crossbar unless the original one had some superior sway dampener. I don't really find a difference. So unless you're moving or gigging with it, I would say just ditch the crossbar, because it probably cost me $40 to make. That dowel was long and not cheap, because I think the original wooden dowel rods at Home Depot only go 3 feet. Now, those of you who have been researching may have found that I did not ground my key bars or my key rods. I think almost every Hohner you see has that little conductive copper wire running on each key rod connecting to the grounding housing. I, under Alan Lenhoff's advice, co-author of Classic Keys book, he said I didn't need it because the clavinet.com rubber sticky pads can create a static electricity buildup which discharges with that key press. So grounding all the keys would fix that. The Kenrich pads, just like the original pads, are not rubber and do not have that issue. I haven't had an issue with static discharge when pressing a key, so I didn't feel the need to do it. Honestly, there isn't much hum anyway. There will be a little bit because I have to turn up the volume since the keys are a little quiet, but maybe not because the amp's a little bit louder here. And bringing up the amp, today for my recordings, I'll be running this through my Silvertone 1480 something. It's a 5-watt tube amp. It's been serviced, so it's not bad sounding, but it will be running through that instead of just a DI into the Zoom. I'll be miking it with a Sennheiser dynamic microphone into the Zoom. So hope you guys enjoy. If I have any extra clips, I'll put them here at the end before the demo. But honestly, it's quite a hit or miss when it comes to voicing it. Because when you have a working keyboard, if things don't sound even all the way through, it's just not that great of a keyboard. And these were obviously not made of the highest quality. Hohner is a accordion company, so this wasn't really their first thing, unlike the clav or the other harpsichord inspired instruments. These were just a little more budget friendly. So you get what you pay for. Unfortunately, you're paying for a lot though, which they were still expensive back then. So I guess you can't really say that. But it's a nice sound. It's a nice British sound, like early Faces and stuff like that. But if you have a Wurlitzer, I think I'd pass on it. If you have a Rhodes, different. It's also a lot lighter than a Wurlitzer. Not a 200, a 140. But it is a little bit longer, I believe, but a little bit shorter. So I don't know. Honestly, it's not a bad looking piece. It's definitely pretty contemporary, but unlike a Wurlitzer, you can't put stuff on top unless you fold and modify the lid to just stand straight instead of on the triangle. So other than that, I'm going to wrap this video up with the videos of the demo. And if you enjoyed, I have some other videos. I have some new ones coming up with some Wurlitzer amp comparisons, and I have a Rhodes piano bass coming tomorrow. So hopefully that should be done in a week or two, and I'll do a video on that. So if you enjoyed, stick around, and I'll see you next time.